Wilson is more than a little frustrated with Seattle. We'll discuss that in 10 minutes. But I want to revisit something we discussed yesterday here for a moment, which was, and Joy in the news mentioned how Jerry Rice said, Tom Brady's the GOAT now. Whether you agree that there is such thing as a football GOAT, what had been true was Rice and Brady were the only NFL guys ever that you could cut their careers in half and say, first half, second half, both first ballot Hall of Fame careers. Pick a half, either one, first ballot Hall of Fame production, accolades, all of it. Brady, with this latest Super Bowl victory, elevated to an impossible tier, which is 3 separate first ballot Hall of Fame careers. If you just cut it into thirds, and we showed it to you yesterday. There's the Aikman phase, which was the first 7 years of his career. And again, the numbers on the right are what that player did in their entire career. And on the left is what Brady did over this 7-year stretch. Matched him in Super Bowls, beat him in Super Bowl MVPs, neither won a regular season MVP in that time. Then there's the Dan Marino phase. And again, that's Marino's entire career on the right-hand side versus what Brady did from 07 to 13. And again, it's more appearances, more Super Bowl appearances, more Super Bowl MVPs, if you're listening on the radio and you can't see the graphic. And then these last 7 years are the Montana phase. And this is the one that is really, truly incomprehensible. Because Joe Montana was the gold standard for greatest quarterback ever. And Brady, in the last 7 years, has the same number of Super Bowl titles, the same number of Super Bowl MVPs, 1 fewer regular season MVP than Montana did in his whole career, but one more Super Bowl appearance. And this is the other thing on the Tom versus time, where everyone must acknowledge he's winning. Of those 3 phases, the Aikman phase, the Marino phase, the Montana phase, the most impressive is the most recent one. What he's done the last 7 years is better than he did the middle 7 or the first 7. It's not just that he won more Super Bowls. It's not just that he went to 5 of 7 Super Bowls, but it's also that the one Super Bowl he lost, he threw for 500 yards, and he did it now with a new team, with a different team. In fact, I would argue, and I know some Pats fans will disagree with me here, I think each one is more impressive than the last. I think the most impressive is the last 7 years. The next most impressive is the middle 7, even though he won no Super Bowls in those middle 7. He had the undefeated season. He had 2 league MVPs. Those teams were propelled by him, not the defense. And somehow the least impressive is the first 7 years when he won 3 Super Bowls in his first 4 years as a starter. Could Russell Wilson be on the move? That's next on The Herd. Nothing. Kevin, it's great to see you. Sunday was bottom 5 day of my life. Also on that list are both of my slow news day appearances, but we don't have to get into that right now. What the hell happened? Yep. What happened on Sunday?
Well, we spent the last 2 years thinking that Patrick Mahomes was this unstoppable John Wick character. Doesn't matter what happens, he's got the knockout power. And then we found out the limits. The limits were Mike Remmers. The limits were not having any of the things that make you that you normally provide the base of your success. And I think that we saw that for the first time he's mortal. And I actually think this might end up being good for his career. But to answer your question, 29 pressures happened, and no one can overcome that, not even the best quarterback we've ever seen.
When you say it could be good for his career, explain why.
So, I think that we get into this trap where we think that every other team can go all in all the time, and Mahomes just is the only ingredient needed in Kansas City, and that Reed is the only ingredient needed in Kansas City. And I've talked to Brett Veach about this, the GM, and he basically says that every team now is all in every single year. Remember a couple of years ago, Les Snead, the Rams GM, said, oh, the Rams we're going to be like the Warriors, all this stuff. And it was revolutionary at the time. Well, now everybody who competes for a championship, probably 8 teams a year, they're all in. They're maximizing the cap. They're trading for a superstar every single year. I mean, Stephon Diggs with the Bills last year is a good example of that. And so I think that now we know Mahomes is 10-year contract. He still has the 16th and 18th biggest cap hits the next 3 seasons. So it's not like it goes to some insane number. The Chiefs are going to need to build, and they're going to need to. They have the base for success, but they're going to need to take some swings. And I think that we learned that last night. And a lot of that is going to be offensive line. We don't know the future of Mitchell Schwartz. We don't know the future of Eric Fisher. Obviously went out 2 weeks ago, and we don't know how long-term that's going to be. Mahomes needs help like everybody else. I think he's the best quarterback I've ever seen, but he's human. That's what we learned.
So let's talk about, I think, the MVP of the game, who obviously didn't get an MVP vote, and that's Todd Bowles. Because we can talk about the Chiefs' offensive line being banged up, and it was, but it's the same offensive line they had against Buffalo, minus Eric Fisher. I know they moved people around, but Mitchell Schwartz been out for 3 months. They've been playing with a lot of these guys throughout the year, and the Chiefs went 38-6 run on Buffalo, and against the Bucs, it looked like Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech, running around trying to make a crazy play, totally overmatched. And, I have egg on my face because before the game, I said to Colin, I was like, you're acting like the Bucs front four are the Purple People Eaters. They're really good, but they're not the greatest D-line ever. I still feel that way, even though they played like the greatest D-line ever, which to me is about the scheme. How did Todd Bowles so outmaneuver Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy?
He made adjustments, and he went with a strategy he's never done in his life, which is he blitzed 9% of the time, which is the lowest number on record. And he said, okay, here's what I do. It doesn't matter. Throw it out. Here's what the Chiefs aren't good against. And listen, Todd Bowles did not invent taking away the deep pass, okay? Bunch of teams have done that against Patrick Mahomes. The difference was, first of all, obviously the pressure within the linebackers. And they had fast linebackers who could hang with the Chiefs, and that's what made the difference. Whether that's Levante David hanging on and being okay against Kelsey for 3 quarters, whether that's Devin White being all over the place and taking away screens. I mean, the pressure obviously was the most notable thing. That's where everything flowed through. But the defensive backs played well. The linebackers played well. This team was built for the Chiefs. And I don't think that was intentional. Just sort of, a fast team that could hang with them. And then Todd Bowles knew what to do with him. In the biggest game of his life, Todd Bowles made adjustments. Andy Reid didn't. That is the coaching story of this game.
One more on the Super Bowl, and then I want to move on to some other things. You mentioned Andy Reid didn't make adjustments.
Yeah.
That was shocking to me. I think you're totally right, but it was watching it happen. I don't know what the counterpunch was, and maybe it would have whiffed, but I would have liked to seen it. Like, what did you make of why he didn't and what they could have done?
Okay, so the biggest shock to me for the entire game wasn't the pressure, because I guess if you had told me they get a bunch of pressure against those tackles, I would understand that, okay? The biggest shock to me is that nothing changed throughout the game. I mean, how accustomed are you and I to seeing Patrick Mahomes down 10 points, 14 points, 24-7 if it's against Bill O'Brien, and then he just turns it on, right? It's like seeing Liam Neeson in an action movie. Like, you know what's coming. Here come the fireworks, right? And nothing ever happened because the pressure never got better. And so 92% of the plays the Chiefs ran were in 5-man protection. Now, there's some wiggle room there with the chips and all that stuff, but they didn't ever do a max protect thing or anything like that. And that's not what they like to do. They like to get Travis Kelce out into routes. They like throwing to the back out of the backfield. I understand all that, but I don't care. I don't care at some point. Like, this wasn't about, some people were criticizing Reid for still taking deep shots or whatever. None of it matters if Patrick Mahomes isn't being protected. I was looking at the passing charts this morning. Mahomes was 3 of 7 within 10 yards throwing to the left. Behind the line of scrimmage throwing to the right, he was 3 of 6. This wasn't a play thing. This was a protection thing. So whatever you can do to keep Patrick Mahomes from looking like he's facing a defense that has turned offsides off in Madden, okay, that's what it looked like, or they were doing a jailbreak screen and it was intentional. I don't know what it was. I've never seen anything like it. So if you can get Mahomes out of that scenario, you do it, and Andy Reid just never did it. I don't care it's not what you do. Change what you do, because Todd Bowles did.
All right, so this could be the offseason of unprecedented quarterback movement.
Yes.
We already saw Stafford and Goff, that trade. Wentz might get traded. There are 2 superstars who I don't think are going anywhere, but they seem to be a little nonplussed with their current situations. And that is one of your favorites, Aaron Rodgers, and another one of your favorites, Russell Wilson. Okay, by the way, if you don't know Kevin Clark, he likes really good football players. They're mostly all his favorites.
Huge fan.
So you said something that I thought was interesting that applies to, I think, Rodgers and Wilson. You said that Les Snead said every year we're all in. Like everyone's all in. And that Brett Veach, they're all in. And you look around the league and it's like, oh, the Bucks went all in. They got Brady, they got Gronk, they got AB, they traded up in the draft, they're in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs had Alex Smith, they trade up, we're not satisfied, and they keep push.